Welcome to Season 4 of the Armchair Athletes on CMRU.ca.
We're here to talk to 4 major American sports leagues.
Your favorite sports show on CMRU.ca.
With Clayton.
Give me a break. You guys have proven nothing.
Taylor. If you ever want to get rid of him, you're never going to get anything for him.
Terrell.
Every team plays at that stadium. The Orioles have to hit to the same wall, too.
And Will.
Every week, there's a new report that's like, Miami is the top suitor for Damian Lillard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Armchair Athletes with Clayton.
And Terrell.
Yeah, just us two original, or I guess of the 4 main members of the Armchair Athletes. Truman should be joining us soon here, but I guess important context here in case I'm a little late on posting this episode. It's currently 5:10 p.m. Mountain Time on May the 16th, 2025, in case you're listening to this episode in 2029. Never know.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, I've currently at this point heard the Laid on the Line commercial way too freaking much. I don't know if you've been seeing it, Terrell, that they've been playing during the NHL.
I think every time I've tuned in to watch the playoffs, which hasn't been super frequently because I've just been more tapped into basketball, I have seen it at least once or twice.
Yeah. Oh, it's been pissing me off, especially when my team gets eliminated and the first thing I hear is lay it on the line. But we'll have hockey talk at the end of the show. Let's jump in to the NFL. And Terrell, we now know the days of when our teams will be playing. NFL schedule was released. Terrell, is there any days circled on the Seahawks calendar that you're excited for?
Honestly, not particularly. I think anytime we play opening the season against the 49ers is going to be interesting. I am kind of excited for when the Vikings come back to Seattle just to see what happens with Sam Darnold. But I mean, purely out of spite, this is totally based on the I don't know if you've watched any of the other teams' schedule release videos or any of the posts they've made. The one that the Jaguars did was made totally out of AI, so now I'm looking forward to watching Seattle whoop the Jaguars in Week 6 because it was just so lame.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, I'd say definitely the 49ers game, Week 1, is going to be right off the bat. And we have an early Armchair Athlete Civil War Week 2 as well, so that'll be interesting against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
But
I enjoyed the Seahawks release video.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Figures. Yeah.
Most of the time, what inevitably happens is we'll get to I'll watch the Chargers one. The Chargers social media team, they always kill it, whatever they're doing. And this year was exactly the same. Theirs was sick. And then Seattle's, I'm kind of like, meh. But this year I really like Seattle's. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I assume, do you have any games that you're really looking forward to?
I mean, you kind of outlined them. I guess the primetime games as well. They play the Texans on Monday Night Football at home. They get the bye, and then the next week after that, they're Sunday Night Football against the Commanders. And that's going to be a tough game, obviously. I don't think the Seahawks will win that one. But I like when the Seahawks play on Sunday Night Football, just because it feels like the whole football world's kind of watching you that night.
Mm-hmm. I guess, you know what? I'll be excited for the Titans game, too. I'm kind of excited to see what Cam Ward does and going against such a formidable defense of the Seattle Seahawks. It'll be a big test for him in Week 12. But I don't know. The schedule, to me, doesn't seem super crazy.
Yeah.
It looks like one of the easier ones in the league.
I counted 11 wins on the schedule, but that was somebody said the NFL schedule releases here. Your team is definitely going 10-7.
So true.
I'm sure every other fan does that as well, where they manage to count 10 wins.
Inevitably, yeah, you're not going lower than 10 wins. You got a minimum there.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this season. Excited to see if the offensive line can shape up a little bit. But as we talked a lot about the San Francisco 49ers, I think we have to talk about the man who just got a rather large payday in Brock Purdy. I don't want to be, too low on the guy as I have been in the past. But when you're paying, I believe the contract total was 5 years, $265 million. And that puts him right between Jared Goff and Tua, which if those are the only two names you look at, that's not that bad of a contract. But it's ahead of Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Mahomes, Stafford. Even, I think deals like Geno going to the Raiders for 37.5, Darnold to Seattle, 33.5, Baker, 33. Deals like that, I think it's just a little rich, but at the same time for the San Francisco 49ers, what else are you going to do? You don't want to be stuck in quarterback purgatory. I'd say, honestly, their two best options were re-signing Purdy or signing Sam Darnold. And once Darnold was out the window, didn't have too many options left over.
So welcome Truman onto the show here. Truman, we don't worry, we just got started here. We didn't talk about much yet, just the NFL schedule release. Quick, is there any games on the Packers schedule you're looking forward to?
When we beat the Bears twice. I think it's 14 and 16, so those would be two fun wins.
And then we were just talking here about the Brock Purdy extension just happened today. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know that you're not exactly a Brock Purdy fan either, but
that's breaking news. I didn't even know that. I've been at
Really?
work all day, so I didn't know that. I just found that out from you guys. So
He got 5 years, 265.
265. Who is paid like that? I'm just curious.
Between Tua and Jared Goff, Tua's making $100,000 more.
When you bring up those two guys, it doesn't sound like it's as bad, but at the same time, like, he didn't really do anything last year. I know he was injured a bit, but like, he's not a game changer. And I wouldn't say that those other two guys are either, but I feel like both of those guys are also slightly overpaid. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a great contract, but it kind of is what it is.
Part of the other thing with those two deals is that those guys got 4 years and Purdy got 5.
That was weird.
And then when you look at it, like, he's getting paid more than Lamar by a little bit, Hurts by a little bit, Kyler by a little bit, Mahomes, but that deal's kind of, it's its own thing by now. Stafford by a bit, and then, like Geno, Darnold, Baker. I don't know. I was trying not to be too negative about it, but if the options are, nobody at quarterback or Brock Purdy, they didn't have any other options, so I think they just kind of had to sign him.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I guess we could move on here to talk about the NBA and their playoffs currently going on. And I know, like, in recent years, people have been trashing the NBA playoffs. This year, it's been really good. It's been really entertaining, I've found. I don't know about you guys, but I've been really entertained, especially in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think all my predictions in the West are like way off. But watching Closet Warriors fan, obviously they have Jimmy Butler, who's my favorite player, but I also love Steph Curry. And so watching them in the first round was like so fun. And then obviously the second round, they laid a goose egg. Also a big Anthony Edwards fan. So, I mean, I've enjoyed watching him this year in the playoffs. And so, yeah, I've been tapped in with the NBA. And also the fact that the Celtics, outside of like Tatum getting injured, the fact that they were down with having Tatum in the lineup in that series is like so shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just view them as such a powerhouse, and for them to be trailing to the New York Knicks, who, like, the Knicks are really good, but it's also just the Knicks still. So, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see the Celtics down because I'm not a Celtics fan by any means.
No. We do have our baller of the week. I chose the baller of the week this week. Terrell, do you approve of my choice?
I mean, it's kind of scheduled at this point, if we're being honest. Who else could it possibly be?
Truman won't like it, but it is what it is. I got Nikola Jokic, 30 points per game, 14.5 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists per game, and 2.5 steals per game in the last week. Playing good basketball for the Denver Nuggets. And I guess we'll just jump into that series. they're heading to Game 7 against the OKC Thunder. And Terrell, you had wrote down that you're tired of Jokic's foul baiting.
I mean, as a big Jokic guy, I wanted to talk about it last week and I just completely forgot. It's starting to get really egregious. It's like Jalen Brunson level, like hooking on to people and like jumping into them. And I don't know, when you're like 7, whatever he is, and 300 pounds, and Chet Holmgren, the stick figure of a human being who would maybe fly away if the wind blew him too hard, he runs into you and then all of a sudden you're like flying backwards and your arms are in the air and, you know, you're looking to the refs. It's kind of the exact same thing with Brunson for me, where it's like Brunson is very clearly an incredibly talented offensive player, but watching him play basketball is frustrating when he foul baits as much as he does. Nikola Jokic is obviously very good offensively. It becomes frustrating to watch him play when he's foul baiting this much. But yeah, I mean, despite that, he still is having a great series and obviously a great past few games. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I love Jokic, but it's getting to the point where it's like I feel like I kind of have to mention it because it's every game at this point.
Yeah. Who do you got winning Game 7?
I just feel like inevitably it's going to be the Thunder. I think Denver doesn't have the depth. The whole reason that they made it this far in the first place is because Russ was doing things he had never done before in this Clippers series. And then since then, he's really cooled off. And it would take like a generational Jokic game. And then also all the role players would have to step up. You have to get good games out of Gordon and Murray. MPJ, I think, is just kind of a lost cause at this point. He stunk this whole series. I know he's got like a shoulder injury. So, you know, take how he's playing with a grain of salt maybe, but I just don't know if Denver has the gas to make it happen. But at the same time, it could just be, Jokic goes nuclear and there's just enough from one other guy, and that's all it takes. And maybe, could be the same thing from OKC because Shea's had some great games that they've lost because J-Dub has been awful. And Chet hasn't been as good as he normally is offensively. So both of these teams, honestly, I think they've had some disappointing performances so far. But if I had to bet on one team being able to pull through for Game 7, I think it would be OKC.
I've got OKC as well. I think they're going to pull it off in Game 7.
Peachtree, science degree, JaVale McGee. I'll take OKC.
I like that one. Is there any other points you want to make in regards to the OKC and Nuggets series?
Julian Strother in this past game, he was cooking. He went 15 points, but all of his points came in the second half. And he hit, I think, 3 threes in the game. And just really was he's what pushed the Nuggets over the top in this game. And then obviously, like we said, Jokic has as good game as we kind of come to expect from him. But, and then J-Dub, man, 6 points on 3 of 16 shooting. If he could pull it together even a little bit, I think OKC runs away with this series. But so far, that just hasn't happened. And it's really kind of unfortunate because he's been putting up stinker after stinker, 18-10, and then he put up 32 earlier in the series, but then 17-16, 23. So he just hasn't been the most efficient. His splits have been horrible. But if he can get it together even slightly, I think OKC can pull this out pretty easily.
Yeah.
Can I pull up my one hot take for this show? It's not about Jokic, actually. And I don't even know if it's a hot take. I don't think the Thunder should actually trade Chet Holmgren, but for his sake, I think they should trade him because I think on a different team, he would be so much better if he was like their primary option. Like if he was on a stinker, like the Hornets or like, I don't know, what's the Wizards? Like I feel like he'd be unreal, but it's just because he plays with so many good players in OKC that like he doesn't probably get the shine or the opportunity to shine that, I feel like he should. Obviously, OKC should keep him because he's really good. But from a Holmgren perspective, I would be interested to see how he'd play on a different team.
I kind of think the same thing, but I would say it's the inverse. I think OKC should look at trading Jan Williams while they can. I think he'd be selling very, very high, and I think it'd have to be the right kind of deal. It would be the same thing as Chet, I assume, where it's like, realistically, you would never do it, but if the right offer came across the table, then you'd have to at least consider it. But I just think that his archetype and the way he plays offensively has really been kind of highlighted these playoffs. It is not working. At the very least with Chet, like J-Dub's a great defender, don't get me wrong, but Chet's like decoy level. So at the very least with Chet, even if he's not getting it going offensively, you're still getting that on the other end of the floor. But I totally agree. I think if Chet got moved somewhere else and was the number one option, he would really flourish. And then maybe the same with J-Dub. I don't know. Maybe he just needs more reps on offense, but he's looked awful so far this series.
Yeah. Next series in the Western Conference, I think we briefly mentioned it, but the Timberwolves, they eliminated the Golden State Warriors. My series MVP for that series, I couldn't decide. So Terrell and Truman, I'm going to need you guys to help me out here between Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle.
Anthony Edwards, because I love him, and he's great.
I mean, I was going to say unbiased. It's probably Julius Randle. But I don't know, man. I love Ant a lot. Julius Randle has just been so good and so efficient, and he's always come through. Even in games when Ant hasn't had his best performances, Randle's putting up like at least 20, 23 a game. So I would say purely for the consistency and the efficiency he's scoring at, I would go Randle. But at the same time, I love Ant a lot too. So if you want to go him, I would totally understand.
It's exactly how I feel.
Fair enough.
The Tigers just hit a home run, by the way.
Oh, I thought you were about to say the Medicine Tigers scored. I'm like, I didn't even know that game was on yet, but I will be watching tonight.
Yeah, I guess they're up 3-1. They've got a chance to clinch. Who are you cheering for in that series?
I knew you were going to ask this because I've told Clayton before. I, as a kid especially, was a diehard Spokane Chiefs fan. Like, I have family ties there, and so I would, when they lost out, I would bawl my eyes out. I remember they lost to Portland one year in Game 7. My dad wouldn't let me watch the game at night. I checked the box score in the morning and just started screaming because they'd lost. And I was so upset. But now it's weird because I don't have those ties anymore with Spokane, although I've rooted for them for forever. And I'm from Medicine Hat. So if they win, the celebration here is going to be nuts. And it'll be something I never experienced. And two, if say they were to lose tonight and it comes back and they play at home and they win, that's something I just would want to see because it's cool. Yeah. So at my core, I'm still always a Spokane Chiefs fan, but I kind of find myself rooting or being in favor of the Tigers just because I want to be around that atmosphere so badly. But honestly, whoever wins this.
I was good to say. You can't lose. That sounds kind of
I can't lose. I'm not a fan of two teams. I want to make that very clear. But for the atmosphere, the Tigers would be much cooler. And yeah, then if they lose tonight, I'm actually praying they lose tonight because I want to go to the game when they win it all. Or if Spokane wins it, whoever does. I just want to see it in person. So
yeah. Sorry for interrupting the basketball for a little bit of hockey talk there. But I guess we'll get back here. And Terrell, do you have any more thoughts on that Timberwolves Warriors series?
Not overly. I think it was just so disappointing to see Steph go out for this series because obviously he's a complete game changer. And then when this Warriors team doesn't have Steph to carry the offensive load, things fall apart really, really quickly. And I think that reflected in how the rest of the series went. Podziemski played pretty good, all things considered. Kuminga had a couple of good games, but it's you're not going to get the level of offense that you need out of those guys, or at least not enough to cover what you're losing with Steph Curry. And then this Wolves defense is just so good. There's only so much you can do. I do think Warriors fans acting like this was going to be the easiest series of their lives if Steph played is also maybe a bit too far in the other direction. But I don't know. I just really wanted to see Steph out there because the series would have been so much more fun and instead, ends sooner than we all would have hoped in 5 games.
Yeah. So does that mean we're going to get Draymond Green on the TNT panel for the conference finals?
I need him as
Probably.
far away. Send him out there with wherever Aaron Rodgers went for his retreat. Send him out there and leave him there. Don't let him come back, please.
Draymond would start kicking people, thinking they're ghosts.
That's why we're leaving him out there, man. He's not coming back.
I guess we'll move over to the Eastern Conference, and one of the teams has been finalized for the Eastern Conference Finals. The Indiana Pacers eliminated the Cleveland Cavaliers. Bit of a upset, especially I don't think people were expecting how quick of a series that was. But we've got the series MVP here. I wrote down Tyrese Halliburton. Do I have any objections?
Absolutely not. Not for me, at least.
No, not even. He's the MVP by far, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we mentioned it on last week's show. People need to stop calling him overrated, players and fans, analysts too. And you know what, though? I wouldn't be opposed to it because that could be some pretty entertaining basketball in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think.
I mean, I'm now kind of interested to see what happens with this series because I thought I was pretty high on Indiana, even just picking them to beat the Bucks to begin with. But I thought for sure that the Cleveland would be the end of their run. But Halliburton's just so good. He runs his offense so perfectly. And I just really didn't expect them to look this good. And then not only that, but I think out of the, whatever the other two teams, happens with the Knicks and the Celtics, I thought for sure if somehow they made it past Cleveland, then they'd be knocked out by Boston. But now with the injury to Jason Tatum, that is kind of up in the air as well. And if the Knicks move on, I think the Pacers have a pretty good shot against them as well. Regardless, Halliburton has been fantastic this entire playoffs and the regular season. We talked about it in the last episode how he was, I think, 10 for 11 on game-winning or tying shots in the final 2 minutes. And, of course, some of them are, they're ridiculous. The one against the Bucks where he was, perpendicular with the floor or parallel with the floor. And then, obviously, he had the game winner in this series as well. So, I don't know, man. This Pacers team is just so much fun to watch. And then, obviously, you have Canadian Andrew Nembhard out there, playoff riser. Hard not to cheer for him at this point.
Yeah,
What'd you guys think
how to
of
win in the playoffs?
Yeah. I was going to ask as well, what'd you guys think of this season for the Cavaliers overall?
Waste.
I'll let you go first, Truman.
You said waste.
I don't have a lot to say. I just think it's a waste. You have a regular season like that. And for certain players, when you look at it from a player's perspective, for Donovan Mitchell, obviously he didn't win a chip, but he had an unreal year. You can't knock him on that specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you have a historic regular season and eventually you're going to run out of gas. You feel like now we look back in history, how many teams who have gone on a run like that, they always say the President's Trophy winning curse in the NHL, because nobody ever goes on to go far after winning the President's Trophy. And I think this is a perfect example of it. They were supposed to go far, but at the same time, it's you already reached such a high. The only place to go for them was downward. They just hadn't had a slump all year. And that happens to every team where you get in a little bit of a slump.
Mm-hmm.
Just for them, unfortunately, it happened at the worst time in the playoffs. So,
yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking too, is I think the slump came at the wrong time. That just wasn't as good of a defensive performance, I think, as I thought it was going to be, especially for Evan Mobley. But at the same time, I just think it was Halliburton running the Pacers offense so well. There's only so much you can do. But like you said, for Mitchell, it was a fantastic season. And even I think, he didn't have the most efficient series ever, but I think it was just because he had such a crazy load on him offensively that he was just emptying the clip every game. Obviously put up 35 in that final game of the series. Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, disappointing, but I think, maybe the question is, what does Cleveland do going forward? Because obviously it's a pretty bad look to have all your players playing and be knocked out this early when you're first in the Eastern Conference. But I just think it's going to come down to you will not shoot that bad again in the playoffs. The variance isn't going to go your way every time, and I think that's just kind of what happened for Cleveland here. I don't think it's like panic, hit the big red button, blow everything up, but yeah, just a really disappointing end for a fantastic season.
I also got to just chime. I don't know if you guys have mentioned this on the show, but Terrell said Evan Mobley for most improved at the start of the year, and that was, I don't know if you remember, but that was one of the best takes ever. I got to say, that was a nasty good take.
I thought that defensively, he was kind of already at that defensive player of the year level. And then when you have Wemby, obviously, that comes with an asterisk because you can be as good as anyone in the league defensively. But assuming Wemby's out there, he's going to win. And then obviously Wemby went out partway through the season. So it was like if the offense can come together even a little bit, you would assume that that's possible for him. And I think it went just about as well as it possibly could have because the three-point shot improved pretty drastically. And the defense was just as good. So, yeah, I don't know. I honestly had completely forgotten that was a take I made, but I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that it proved well. I'm sure that there are some other predictions there that looked bad. I think one of them was maybe Ant for MVP as a dark horse, which also wasn't horrific. He had a pretty good year, but it was just kind of a two-man race between Jokic and SGA by the end of it. So,
Then for the other series in the Eastern Conference, gone about as poorly as you can imagine for the Celtics right now. They were down 3-1. They won this last game to make it 3-2, but they are without one of their top players. Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, and things are not looking good here for the Boston Celtics.
I mean, this series should have been over. Like, it should have been over last game. It was like the most ridiculous Luke Kornet performance ever. He had 7 blocks coming out of that one. I know I had been pretty high on Porzingis heading into this series, and he has just not been good by any stretch. Obviously, he's got that weird illness, whatever he's got going on, where Mazzulla's saying, like, he can't breathe, like he has difficulty breathing while he's out there on the floor. But then he's also saying, but if he can be out there, we're going to have him out there. That just doesn't really make sense to me. If you're like, if that is the case, why are you saying that? Because now obviously all the Knicks are going to do is just hound him on defense because he's going to get gassed right away and he's going to have to come out. But for Boston, yeah, I think the second Tatum went out, you kind of expected the series to be over. So to even pull one more game out, I think is a big win. Obviously, it came off the back of, like I said, that Kornet performance and then Derek White dropping 34. Do you expect that to happen again? Probably not. So I do think the Knicks end up closing this game out tonight. That game starts in like 20 minutes. But yeah, kind of the same deal for Boston as it was Cleveland, where I think it's not really necessarily the end of the world, but their contract situation is way, way worse than Cleveland's is. They're one of the worst in the entire league. Porzingis is set to make, I think, $60 million over the next 2 years. They're going to have to just ride that deal out, I'm pretty sure. Same with Drew Holiday. He's also making a similar amount. They're way into the second apron. They're going to get hit with a big tax. I don't know how much it's going to be. It's going to be something ridiculous because they've been in the second apron for so long now. So they're going to have to do some – I don't know what they're going to do to fix their roster. I'm sure they'll have some plan made, maybe that it's trading Porzingis or trading Holiday or something. But they're going to have to do something to fix it. But yeah, just a really disappointing series for Boston, even outside of the Tatum injury. Like I said, Porzingis has been not the best. And yeah, it's just I kind of thought that they would, put the Knicks away with relative ease. I haven't been the highest on the Knicks throughout the entirety of this season and into the playoffs as well. But I mean, they've kept proving me wrong. So
I don't like either of these teams. Like, my two most hated teams are the Celtics and the Knicks, because the Knicks fan base to me is obnoxious, coming from a Leafs fan. But I understand why people don't like Leafs fans when I watch the Knicks and I see their fans. So I honestly just wish that both teams could lose. But back to Porzingis for a second. This reminded me of something. I remember when they traded him to Dallas. I was like, why in the world would you trade this guy? I couldn't figure it out at all. My guess, the Knicks probably, whether it had already happened a bit, because I think he might have been injured even when they traded him. They probably knew this is a guy whose body is not going to hold up. It's not going to stay healthy. When he's in the lineup, he's really good.
Mhm.
But let's get something for him now before, something freakish happens, because his body just can't hold up.
Mhm.
And I think that's why Porzingis has been traded so much and why he's moved around a lot, is because the Knicks saw that early and his body just cannot take the physicality that comes with playing at a high level, which isn't his fault, obviously. It's sad because he's an ultra great talent, but as we're seeing right now, he's just banged up once again, and it's something that just will not recover, unfortunately.
It is kind of crazy that, like, for the entirety of his career, he's been this, like the unicorn is what he's known as. And he's had this super high ceiling, and he's this stretch big that brings so much defensively, but then he's never on the floor. And then when he is on the floor, he's fantastic. And then now finally, physically, he's actually healthy. But then he has whatever this illness is that's kept him sidelined for so much of the year. And it's like, you'd think if you're a Celtics fan, you're like, okay, he doesn't have, like no ankle, no like nothing actually physically injured. But then he's got this, like, they don't even know what it is. They've sent him to doctors. They have no idea what's happening to him. So it's like the most, I guess, at least if it's an injury, like, what's happening, you have a timetable for recovery. With this, it's like he's out there. He is not the best. Clearly something's wrong still. And you just have no timetable for when he's going to be back to himself. So really disappointing, but hopefully he can get healthy quick. But yeah, I don't know. Not looking great for the Celtics.
For the series MVP for that series, I've got Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, again, kind of inarguable. Truman, I was on the exact same page as you. I don't like either of these teams. I think last episode I said if the option were for either team to win or for both teams to be like sucked into an alternate dimension, I would probably take the alternate dimension. It's the same thing. Boston fans, you've had it too good for too long. Knicks fans are just really annoying. But yeah, so honestly, I do think it is. I would rather have had the Knicks win because, like I said, Boston fans have had it too good for too long. So at the very least, the Knicks win this series. It's a team that I think is a little more deserving of it. But yeah, and honestly, they're kind of fun to watch. As much as I hate the Brunson foul baiting, he's great when he's on. They have OG on the team. I like Cat a lot. So they have a lot of players that I like. And if they move on from this series, I wouldn't be mad at it, especially when our alternative is Celtics back-to-back championships.
I guess, do we have any more that we want to talk about in terms of the playoff series? Because we've got some more news in the NBA, some pretty big news. The Dallas Mavericks have won the draft lottery.
Saved his job. Like it saved Nico Harrison's job.
Yeah, it
they're not
certainly
firing him
did.
now. Like, they're going to be great. Sucks for Cooper Flag. That's actually not a good spot for him at all. Like, him and I don't know if it's me, but him and AD are like young AD are very similar in my mind. And like AD he's obviously the vet. He's more polished. Like, he's gonna get all the touches as the big in their system. Like, Flag if he struggles out the gate, I wouldn't be surprised, just because he's not going to be the guy on that team. And when Kyrie comes back, he's the third option. So they're squandering his talents, I feel like, by having him.
I've seen all those mock trades that they're going to trade the number one pick. Of course, those are just jokes, but they've been pretty funny to see. Now, there are, of course, I feel like, let me just say this right now. And yes, they did release the video after. I don't think this is rigged, but I think the NBA needs to start doing this lottery live on TV, similar to how the NHL just did theirs. Mm-hmm. And I understand that it's not the most simple thing for like the casual fan to understand, but I'd rather have something complicated that gets rid of those rigged allegations than something that invites them into the discussion.
Definitely. And I I don't think this one was rigged. Do I think ones have been rigged in the past? Yes. The Knicks Ewing one, like it's blatant. We've seen the video. Like it was the LeBron one or the D Rose one maybe rigged.
LeBron
Yes.
said his was.
Yeah, and D Rose, the Bulls had like the worst odds to get the first pick, and they somehow got it. Like, so a couple of those, even the like crazy enough, the Zion one, I actually think with AD leaving, and then like he was their golden ticket to kind of save that franchise too, because they were talking about moving them at that point. Now, obviously, that didn't work out, but yeah, I do think in the past it has. I don't know if this one was though. It just seems a little far fetched. Yeah, I don't think everything's rigged. So yeah,
I kind of in the same thing where it's like, if there was anything that could be rigged in any sports league, this would be like one of the easiest things to do. But at the same time, I just think it's not. I think the system itself is dumb. I wish it wasn't the way that it was. I've seen people advocate for it to come to like the NFL. Please, for the love of God, keep the draft lottery away from the NFL. Like, please.
Yeah.
I think
I seen someone like absolutely arguing for it after the NBA draft lottery. Why is this the draft lottery that you're like pushing it out after?
Yeah, true. That's very true. Pick any other year to try and make the argument, man. But like, it's so, I think it works less the less games that you play, because like, I'm sorry, I get that some teams are bad in the NFL. Tanking just isn't that big of an issue in the NFL. If tanking was an issue, we wouldn't have seen, the Patriots win against the Bills the final week of last season. We wouldn't have seen Drew Lock have that performance in the final week of the season for the Giants. Like, if teams are tanking on purpose, they're doing a pretty bad job of it. I just think for the most part, a lot of teams suck. There are reasons that teams are bad. And at the same time, I don't think there are enough games for players to be willing to tank. Like, your entire livelihood is staked on 17 games in the season. So if you're putting up stinkers for half of them because your coach says, well, you got to get a better draft pick, that could be the end of your career in, 3 years, because no one will want to resign you again. But it's such a strange system, the fact that a play-in team can jump to get the number one odds. And not only that, if we're supposed to be punishing teams for being bad, the 76ers jumping to third after, like, the season that they had, like, their season was horrific. They were terrible. And then the Spurs getting the second pick, it's like, first of all, I don't agree with the fact that teams should be punished for being bad. I think that's stupid. I think bad teams should get good players so that they stop being bad. Because if I'm a Hornets fan, if I'm a Jazz fan, if I'm a Wizards fan, and I see the first two picks go to a play-in team, and then the Spurs, who just got Wemby 2 years ago, I'd be like pulling my hair out, and I don't know what I'd be doing. I would not be happy because
that was the other point I was going to make. I seen people leading up to the draft lottery saying that they didn't want to see Cooper Flag going to a team like Washington or like Charlotte, and they'd rather see him going to like a big market team. And let me just say, that mentality is going, I think that it's part of the reason why the NBA right now isn't as popular as, say, the NFL. You look at the NFL, you have a team in Wisconsin, the team that Truman cheers for, one of the most historic franchises in the NFL. The best player in the NFL plays in Kansas City. And you wonder why the NFL is so much popular? It's because they do give those small market teams a chance. Look at the two New York teams right now in the NFL. They're an absolute dumpster fire.
Yeah, I totally agree. And kind of on that same thing, it's like, we do see quick turnarounds in the NFL. The Commanders sucked 2 years ago, and then they made it to the NFC Championship game just this past year. And that was a fun story to watch, whether you're a Commanders fan or not, because you're like, this team sucked. They got a quarterback. They, helped their roster out just a bit, and suddenly they flipped their season around entirely from last year. Like, if we got to see that kind of turnaround from the Hornets or the Jazz or the Wizards, that'd be an exciting story, whether you're a fan of those teams or not. Is it exciting that, the team that made arguably one of the worst trades, one of the worst roster moves in sports history has like 3 months without a generational talent on their team, and then they get Cooper Flag as a reward for making that move? I don't think so. Is it exciting that the Spurs, who got Victor Wembanyama 2 years ago, now I'll be adding another one of the top 2 talents in this draft. I don't think so. It's just, I don't know. It's just frustrating, and I wish the lottery isn't necessary in my opinion. Teams are going to suck. That's just how it works. Teams will be bad. I don't know if there's any way to properly fix it. I don't think there's surefire way to make it so that everything is fair and equal and everyone gets what they want. But with the way this currently works, I think they at least have to filter out play-in teams from the lottery. I don't know. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, and I love dynasties. I've talked about this before, and how much I actually enjoy super teams. Dynasties, I like that kind of stuff, because when they don't win, then it's well, you were supposed to, and that creates an interesting storyline. And when you constantly win over and over again, it's this is something that we're never going to see again that's happening. But that does not happen unless you're given the opportunity through rebuilding a team. And a lot, you look at every dynasty ever, and it starts with the homegrown player, whether he's first overall or not. It starts with the homegrown player, and then those other guys flock in and build around. And that's how that happens. Your chances if you have the first overall pick are better at getting a really good player who translates to the NBA. But I just look at it all the dynasties that wouldn't have happened if teams just kept getting pushed back in the lottery, and these a team like the 76ers or even the Spurs kept getting those picks and then for the young guys, they don't get an opportunity to shine. They're playing behind someone's shadow already. And that's how a lot of the time that busts are created, is these guys just aren't even given an opportunity. Now, there's some guys like Hasheem Thabeet and Kwame Brown who just are straight up terrible. But you look at it in the case of, I'm trying to think of a really good example here. Dylan Strome. I know this is hockey, but gets drafted to the Arizona Coyotes. They don't even put him in the lineup for 3 years. They give him no opportunity because they had centers and guys that were vets. He goes to Chicago, puts up 50 points. Then his opportunity in Chicago goes away. Then he goes to Washington. First line, has 70 points this year. He goes from being
82
a bust.
this year, actually. Sorry to correct you. He had 82.
How many do you have?
82.
Oh, even better. 82 this year. He goes from being one of the biggest busts in one of the biggest and best drafts we've ever seen to an unbelievable player. Probably if we were naming all-stars this year through the first half, he would have been a part of that group. There was an argument for him to be on Team Canada, and that's all situation based. So whoever the 76ers get, don't expect him to be good, especially if they get a point guard. He's going to be playing behind Tyrese Maxey. Good luck getting any touches or having any shine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's the rare cases, obviously the Jared McCains of last year, where that guy's just flat out too good. And regardless how many times he touches the ball, he's going to average double digits because he is just that good. But that's not how it works for everybody. And so it does frustrate me a lot when, you see a team like Dallas or the Spurs continually win the lottery or win it when you're in a place that you shouldn't be. So,
I think that does it then for the NBA. And then we'll move on to the MLB. And speaking of baseball, Truman, are you currently doing this show from a baseball game?
I am. I decided to stay. Go Mavs. Got a ring on the other side from, this is bad, I should know this, 2018. I think 2018 when they won.
Nice.
I'm at the park. I guess I can flip it around. There's the
Look
park.
at that.
Solid view.
Yeah, that's my desk.
That's pretty cool.
It's a pretty nice desk spot. Sometimes they put me downstairs and it's not as great, but good seat in the house up here. So
Certainly is. And we can start off talking about your Yankees having a pretty good season so far, leading the AL East. What have been your thoughts on the Yankees thus far?
I'll be honest, I've followed the Yankees as I always do, but my watching has been very limited because I have been stuck in a chokehold with a team that I do not like, and also the WHL playoffs have been lots of fun. So I've been really zoned in on that. And then obviously, as I said, the NBA, I was watching the Warriors all the time, and that has caught my attention more. So I haven't watched as much baseball. Aaron Judge obviously is doing things we've never seen before. Again, if you would have told me that Aaron Judge's batting average would be this good at this point in the season, I would not have believed you as a massive Aaron Judge fan. I don't know when he decided to just become an all-you-can-do-it player now. Not that he wasn't before, but now it's on a different level. He could struggle for 2 months and probably still win the MVP. He's doing things we haven't seen very often, and that's fun when he's on your team. Aside from that, the Yankees pitching sucks outside of Max Fried, who's one of the best pitchers in the MLB this year. Devin Williams can go to Cancun because he's awful. Luke Weaver, he's still fun to watch, and he's still been fine. But the Yankees have been good. Paul Goldschmidt resurgence as a guy that I really like, so that's good. I've always said Paul Goldschmidt, my favorite first baseman of all time, back when he was with the D-backs. And now seeing a little bit of that D-backs Paul Goldschmidt on the Yankees is like a dream come true. That was something I would have really wanted as a kid. So that's been fun. Yeah, the Yankees are winning games, but haven't been tapped in as much as I maybe should be.
That's fair. Terrell, did you have any thoughts on the Yankees?
I mean, every time we talk baseball, it feels like at this point in the year, it becomes like an Aaron Judge Glaze session because it's like, what else can you do? He's one of 3 hitters in the entirety of the MLB with an OPS above 1,000. Third is Shohei Ohtani with a 1082. Second is Freddie Freeman with an 1132. But then Aaron Judge has a 1272. He's just blown everyone else out of the water. He's leading the league in batting average with a 410. Next closest is Freeman with a 370. He's leading the league in on-base percentage with a 495. Next best is Freddie Freeman with a 435. And then obviously, of course, he's leading the league in slugging too with a 777. So
a 7 anything, like a 7 slug is not like the baseline is, a 500 slug is really good. A 7 slug, like that's nuts.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And again, next closest is Freddie Freeman with a 697. So it's like Freddie Freeman, who's having an incredible year and will probably be up in MVP talks with his teammate, Shohei Ohtani, and then obviously the other guy in New York, Pete Alonso, is still not even really close to touching the offensive value that Aaron Judge has. And I feel like I've said it a lot, where he is one of, if not the best right-handed hitters we have ever seen. And I would say for me, pretty easily, the best right-handed hitter that I've watched live. And then, like you said, he just, I guess this year decided I'm going to hit for average too. And that's just something he can do. He just turned that on. So it's been really, really fun to watch. But then, like you said, you highlighted Paul Goldschmidt. The next guy, one guy that's one slot above him in terms of OPS, Paul Goldschmidt is 19th. And then Ben Rice is tied for 17th with a 900 OPS, tied with Manny Machado, which I found rather funny. At the start of the year, at least for the first few weeks, Ben Rice was like right up there with Judge in terms of OPS, which it was a hilarious start to the season. So,
yeah, he was hot out of the gate.
Like, I know the concern that I had personally with the Yankees was, number one, the pitching, especially once it was announced that Cole was going to be out for the year. And that has been as big of an issue as we thought it would be. And then the other one was, well, how will they replace the offense from Juan Soto, obviously, who went to the Mets. And so far, it's been Aaron Judge performing at historic levels. And then, like you said, the resurgence of Goldschmidt, and then Ben Rice picking up whatever slack was left over. So, I don't know. As much as I dislike the Yankees as a team, it's hard to deny how much fun it is to watch Aaron Judge when he's playing. And then, again, seeing Ben Rice up there in the top of the league with OPS is also pretty enjoyable.
I don't know how long this is not just like for the Yankees. I think they'll make the playoffs. I think at the start of the year, I said like they'd be a wild card team. Like I was not high after they lost Juan Soto. And I was thinking like, we're getting all these old guys who were good 3 years ago, but they've managed. I think they'll make the playoffs. Last year's team was like really, really good, obviously with the Soto and Judge 1-2 and having Cole. And I thought their pitching options were a lot better last year. In terms of, you didn't have any black holes on the team. other than Clay Holmes, obviously. But the Yankees this year are just so thin compared to what they had. And I just think for a playoff run, I don't know how they're gonna, when they get up against a team like Cleveland, or when they get up against a team like obviously the Tigers right now, how will they last over a long series? And I don't know if they will be able to. Which
I
stinks
just
to
wanted
say.
to say, I'm just going to remove myself here for a second. Going to go grab a charger for my laptop. I thought I brought one. It happened last episode too. I thought I brought one down with me.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, his computer died.
I guess that was a good time to start. We're back.
I was just going to say that I forgot it this time. So going to go run up and grab one here quick.
Sounds good.
But yeah, with this Yankees team, like you said, I think the depth is going to be a concern. Once you get outside those top few guys, he gets quite thin. Then obviously, you don't want to harp on Judge too much. If there's one criticism you have of him, it is the playoffs when they come around. He obviously has like sky high expectations, but even then, he is not close to meeting them once the playoffs roll around. So I really hope that he can have a year where he just shuts everyone up and has a good player performance, whether that means a Yankees ring or not. Because I think he is one of the best hitters that we've ever seen in baseball. And unfortunately, if this is the performances that he continues to put up in the postseason, people are going to have that against him, and they will use it against him for the rest of his career. So, yeah.
What's new? Me liking players who don't perform in the playoffs, aka every favorite player. You know what? Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler saves me because he's big time in the playoffs. But yeah, Judge, Austin Matthews, Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers actually had some good games in the playoffs, and obviously won a championship. So he's probably not a part of that. But most of my other favorites, all playoff stinkers. So
playoff droppers. Once you get one ring, I don't know. With this Yankees team, like I said, I hope that Judge can just have a year where he kind of puts all the doubt to bed, but we'll have to see what happens with him. Regardless, he's been a very fun player to watch so far this year.
Did we want to talk about the players that got reinstated?
We could. I only really have opinions on one of them. So
yeah, and so Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and the other members of the 1919 Chicago, known as the Black Sox, that whole scandal, they've been reinstated by the MLB, so I think they're now eligible to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Cheryl, you do have opinions here on Pete Rose, and I'm going to say I don't disagree.
I think with Pete Rose, if you are making a Hall of Fame case for him, you have to obviously take all the off-the-field stuff and just completely disregard it, which they do not do in Hall of Fame cases, as we know. There are a few guys that have made it in with off-the-field stuff, but PEDs have been a thing that have kept a lot of people out of the Hall of Fame for a long time. Or kept him out altogether. The gambling obviously was the big one that hurt his legacy, at least in terms of stuff that gets talked about a lot. But in my opinion, I think he obviously put up the stats to make the Hall of Fame. He is a bit of a longevity merchant. I know people make fun of LeBron for, he only has all these things because he's putting up good numbers, and because he's playing for 20 years and no one's ever done that before. But LeBron is still playing at a high level. Pete Rose is not playing at a high level for the past 7 years of his MLB career. I think he put up an OPS of 700 once in those final 7 years, not including the season where he was injured. I think he only played like 9 games or something. And it was a 7-0. It was like 7-0 something. It wasn't very good. I just don't think if we're going to be excluding other people from the Hall of Fame for whether it be steroids or what have you, I don't think you can let Pete Rose in. And obviously the reason that I think that is something that we probably can't really talk about on the show. I don't know if you guys are aware of the other thing that has stained his legacy outside of the gambling, but if it was only the gambling stuff, if that was the only blemish on his record, I think I wouldn't care if he made the Hall of Fame, to be completely honest. Is it wrong? Absolutely. Is it the worst thing in the world? Absolutely not. And I think otherwise he did have a great career, obviously the all-time leader in hits. And now, since he's been reinstated, I assume he's going to be listed as that, the hits king once we start, kind of rewriting some of these record books. But personally, I would not have reinstated him to begin with, and I don't think he would be making the Hall of Fame. If I was voting, he wouldn't be getting my vote.
I think it's, like Kurt Schilling isn't in the Hall of Fame because of some like crazy radical things that he said online. I don't know if there's more than that, but that's always what I associated with it. And I think Kurt Schilling, like, just as purely off like skill and career, should be in the Hall of Fame. So I don't think Pete Rose will get in at all. And if we're going by the standard that the MLB is set, I guess I don't think he should get in either then. So.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of my thoughts on it, is that the MLB has set like a pretty clearly defined rule that it's not just about what you do on the field. Off the field stuff matters with it too. Kurt Schilling, like you said, a good example of that. He has said some things. I think very specifically, he has said a lot of things about the voters in the MLB, which obviously, these guys are the ones who are taking you into the Hall of Fame. And if you are fighting with them and disagreeing with them and, doing all the things that he has done, they're probably not going to vote for you. Whether that's right or wrong, I guess, maybe not up for us to decide. But again, if it's only on the field stuff, then, Barry Bonds makes it in, Schilling makes it in, Pete Rose makes it in. But then at that same time, it's like you have to open the field up to everybody. So I think it's just they have this weird kind of ticky-tack selection system. I don't know. If PEDs are keeping some people out and the things that Pete Rose did are not, then kind of I think is a bit of a stain on the MLB's Hall of Fame.
Yep. Now to talk Blue Jays. They're now down 2-0. Tigers just hit another home run.
Good for them.
Yeah. Tigers are having a good season. That entire AL Central.
Mm-hmm.
They're top. They might have 4 teams making the playoffs.
I know. I was just thinking about the standings predictions that I did at the start of the year, talking about how it was like I was pretty sure about some of the other ones. Like obviously the order can be incorrect and things can go wrong, but it was like the top 4 in that AL Central are going to be good. The order can be whatever it wants to be, but those top 4 teams there very solid.
And now for the Blue Jays, going into this game against the Tigers, they were sitting at 21-22 on the season. Been very up and down, been pretty inconsistent. They swept Seattle last weekend, but followed it up by losing 2 of the 3 games against the Tampa Bay Rays and allowed 11 runs in the first loss and 8 in the second loss, the third game of that series. In the second game of that series, it's been kind of the inconsistency. Only allowed 1 run from the Rays. Terrell, what have been your thoughts on the Blue Jays from this past week?
I mean, it's like you said. It's just disappointing how inconsistent this team is. I still watch them. They keep suckering me back in. Like they do it every year. The Seattle series, I was like, all right, I'm back on board. It was fun to watch, especially going to Seattle. That series is obviously always crazy with Blue Jays fans because it's Western Canada and everyone travels down there. But so I watched that series and they got me back. And then the next Tampa series, everything went right back downhill. It's just so frustrating when a team that clearly has the talent to be quite good offensively and then obviously has the pitching talent as well, but can just never line it up. They're never good at one thing at the same time as they are at the other. Because if they were, we saw it in the Seattle series, they are a very talented baseball team. But just super frustrating to watch overall. The one thing that has not been inconsistent with this Blue Jays offense, though, has been Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I know with the rest of this offense thinking it up, he gets a lot of the criticism because he's the biggest name on the team and he signed this big contract and the team isn't the best, so he's going to get the brunt of the blame. But over the past 25 games, he's hitting .308. He has a .423 on base, .516 slugging, and a .940 OPS. The rest of the team over that same stretch is batting .246 with a .311 on base, 393 slugging for a 704 OPS. And for that 704 OPS, they'll put him right in the middle of the league, just behind the San Diego Padres over the past month. So it's super frustrating. Again, like, clearly they have the talent. Vlad's been playing up to his standard, but it's just the rest of this offense has not been pulling their weight. Another guy that has been very good since he's returned to the team, Dalton Varsho. Not hitting for average, not that you expect him to, but he has an 892 OPS since returning to the team. And obviously he's doing everything you expect him to defensively out there in center field. So, yeah, like, there are a few bright spots, and if this team could get everything together, if Santander could, like, obviously we're used to him having slow starts. That's how he's been his whole career. If he could pull it together, if Bo could even have a fraction of the output that he's had in previous seasons, if Kirk could get it together a little bit, there are a lot of guys in this lineup where they could get some offensive production. Didn't even mention Springer, who's been having a fantastic year, let alone for his standards, but just in general. 872 OPS on the season. So they have the guys. It's just the guys are not performing outside of Vlad and Varsho. So I don't know. That's what's frustrating about it, is that you can see the talent, you can see the ceiling that this team can hit. They just can never do it. And as of right now, I'd rather be watching NBA basketball over the Toronto Blue Jays.
That's fair. Do you have anything else that you want to say for the MLB?
I don't think so. I think we covered pretty much most of it. Like I said, every other episode has been an Aaron Judge Glaze session, and this one's no different. But when he's playing as good as he has, it's kind of inevitable. Hopefully Toronto can turn it around and make watching baseball fun again. Will it happen against the Tigers? Probably not. I'll have to wait another series for that to happen.
Alrighty. Before we move on to the NHL, I'll run the gauntlet here. Terrell is going to be leaving here shortly. So thanks for joining the call today, Terrell. We appreciated your insight, as always, your brilliant insight.
Of course. First ever illness episode for me. New version of myself. If this were in person, I would have been, in a bubble wearing a mask. So it was good to get on here. I'm glad my voice held out for as long as it did. But yeah, I'm going to go drink a whole bunch of tea and have a whole bunch of cold medicine.
So you can follow us Instagram at the Armchair Athletes, TikTok at Armchair Athletes. I posted a video this past week that did amazing on the TikTok, 83,000 views. That's the second most views we've had on TikTok, and it was our most liked TikTok we've ever had, where I gave my prediction for each team and who I think would be the first to touch the Stanley Cup for each of the teams that were in the second round. And then Twitter X at Chair Athletes. Terrell, what's been the discussion on the Twitter from this past week?
There hasn't been a whole lot, but what I am going to do is congratulate Brock Purdy on his newly earned contract. Nothing but the best for that guy. Nothing but the best for the 49ers going forward.
YouTube at the Armchair Athletes 196. That's the amount of times I've heard that "lay it on the line" commercial. Oh my God, it's annoying. I've had enough of it. But Terrell, I'll see you later.
I was glad to stay through the rest of the gauntlet. That's important to hear that every episode. But yeah, thanks for having me. Have fun in the NHL, and I'll see you again next week.
Take care, Terrell. Feel better. See ya.
Alrighty, so where do we want to start, Truman? Do you want to start with the Leafs, or do you want to start with the Golden Knights?
It's up to you, Clayton. Just so you know, I do have the Leafs game on in the back, as you would assume.
I have it on in front of me right now.
So if I lose my mind, there was a puck in the blue paint. You know why. But I'll try and stay as tapped in. You choose.
Screw it. We'll go Vegas first. That's what I've got written down here in the notes. So the Oilers, they advanced to the Western Conference Final, their third West Final in the last 4 seasons. Beat Vegas in 5. I was surprised it was a 5-game series. I thought going into the series it was kind of a coin flip. But I will say at the end of it all, the better team won. I can't deny it. I thought the better team overall won, and I've been seeing people blaming certain areas of Vegas's team as to whether it was this or it was that costed them the series. But overall, Edmonton was just better. Like top to bottom, they were. If you saw my predictions video on the socials, you'll know that I said, I quote, Vegas had better depth, defense, and goaltending. They weren't better in any of those three areas in this series. They just weren't. Edmonton was better. Last week on the show, we'd reviewed game 1, which the Oilers had won 4-2. Vegas would lose game 2. That was one that I felt they should have won. I thought they played well in that game, but did have a controversial ending where McNabb's tripped by Arvidsson. I didn't like that play. I don't know how you felt about it, Truman. I thought it was a dangerous play by Arvidsson. I didn't think it was worthy of suspension, but unfortunately it takes out probably your best defensive defenseman. And McNabb straight up said today he wasn't feeling great for the rest of the series. He was a game time decision for the next 3 games, but typical McNabb says, well, everybody else in the playoffs is dealing with something, so that's no excuse. And I do kind of feel that way too. Like, you see that laundry list of injuries that came out of Tampa as well. And they often say that in order to win a Stanley Cup, everybody on your team has to get a surgery. So it's kind of a requirement in order to win that you have to play hurt. But as for the Knights, so they lose game 2 in overtime. But as I usually say, it evens out in the end, because in game 3, the guy who gets Vegas's first goal is Nick Waugh, who I thought should have been suspended for that game after that cross-check in overtime of game 2.
Interesting.
How did you feel about that? Because I thought it was a boneheaded play by Waugh.
Here's what I thought. I didn't think it was obviously intentional. I don't know why he tried to cross-check the puck going through the air. Now, I think if it was blatantly he was going up and trying to hit him in the face, then I would have felt differently about it. I thought he was trying to make a play on the puck, and obviously it's unfortunate, but a guy's face ended up being on the other end. So I think because the intent behind it was not to even come close to someone's face, that's why I thought that it shouldn't have been suspendable. But that's just my view on it, I guess. Yeah,
that's fair. I also don't think it was intentional, but at the same time, too, I think you need more awareness in that situation.
For sure. Yeah, no, he zero level awareness. But going back to the McNabb one for a second, too, and as you said, Vegas' best defensive defenseman, the fact that play just was just pushed under the rug is stupid to me. When players go down, I feel like there should at least be a repercussion, especially when it's someone who's as valuable as McNabb. And maybe you're not calling the penalty because it's the most blatant play you've ever seen, but I think there's situations where you have to call it based on the result, aka that Pavelski one from years ago when he hit his head and they were worried, plays like that. So yeah, was it this horrible blatant thing? No, the result was, and that's what I thought should have deserved at least something yeah.
Well, I thought it was a horrible missed call, and at the end of that game, I was pretty ticked off. I straight up said I'd have rather the Oilers score on the power play than score after that, because then I hate blaming the officials in any sport. And after that game, we're blaming the officials, whereas if the Oilers win, we're blaming our own, on the power play, we're blaming our own team in that situation. Yeah. So I didn't like the end result of that, but as I said, I felt it evened out with this, how game 3 started. And then there were times in that series too where I felt Vegas should have been penalized and didn't. And there were more times in that series where I felt Edmonton should have been penalized and didn't. That's the way the playoffs are. And I don't think, obviously that Arvidsson one's a bad call, but just in reference to how many missed calls there are over a playoff series. And I know people complain and they say that it should be called like the regular season. I honestly think people wouldn't like if the playoffs were called like the regular season. I think they would not like how many times a holding call, and I'm going to say this because I see a lot of people often think that it's the refs are out to get their team. Go watch any game where you're a neutral observer and find how many times you see a hold or a high stick or a trip that gets missed. And I think that at the end of the day, that, like I said, that people wouldn't like if everything, as I'm talking about this, Simone Benoit is headed to the penalty box. But people, I don't think, would like if every call is called in a playoff game.
For sure. No, I completely agree. There has to be, like, you're never going to get it 100% by the book, but like there has to be more of like a consistency, like even just a little bit. That's like fair. The fact that elbows, and this is not why the Leafs are losing, even by a small margin, but the amount of elbows I've seen go into faces in this series and go uncalled is actually just unbelievable. Yeah. And there is 2 plays that Max Domi has made throughout this series where the penalty was so much not a penalty that they didn't even have a replay for what was called twice. This happened twice. I couldn't believe it happened a second time. Now, maybe it was, and they just didn't have but the one, like, I remember Craig Simpson being like, if we don't have footage of this, what are they calling? So I think there's got to be more of it. Yeah, consistent feel where, something like an elbow should be being called, and something that's, like a small slash or something very minor should maybe just be let go because it's the playoffs.
That's fair. I guess back on this Vegas thing, game 3, I thought was going to be the turning point. That was the buzzer beater goal by Riley Smith. Incredible play. Unfortunately, probably going to be forgotten now. I think he'll be remembered by Knights fans, but I think had they went on to win this series, would have been like an all-time moment kind of thing. And then Vegas, of course, there was that bar that did the billboard in Edmonton. And I seen Vegas fans get mad saying that it's too early, especially then after game 4 when Edmonton came back and beat Vegas pretty badly. What I have to say to that is if Vegas wins game 4, people are saying, oh, that's absolutely brilliant. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, the Parkway Tavern that put the billboard in Edmonton, they aren't the ones who control how the Golden Knights play. Whereas I don't feel as strongly about that. Whereas, say, if a Knights player had given the Oilers bulletin board material in this series and then played an absolute stinker in game 4, would have been different, I think, because at the end of the day, they're the ones on the ice playing. But so I talked about game 3, that buzzer beater. My happiness was sky high after that game. But game 4 would sink my happiness a bit. Oilers were the far more aggressive team in game 4. That was the one that got a little out of control with the after the whistle stuff. It wasn't the first period. The last 2 periods, I thought it was going to get way rougher than it did. But I think I think Hill was told to calm down a bit, which I didn't have a problem with what Hill was doing. My problem was with the Golden Knights. I like the players on the team. I felt that there was no pushback from them in that game. I know that there was a fight after the whistle between Haig and Frederick. Was an absolutely great fight, but I felt that during the actual play, the Golden Knights weren't doing anything to push back on what Edmonton was doing to them. And you've seen it on the power play. Vegas went 0 for 3 on the power play in that first period, and they looked rattled. Like they can string 2 passes together on those ensuing man advantages that Edmonton was giving them. So the Oilers end up going on to win game 4, 3-0. Then game 5 was a coin flip, and both teams were excellent defensively in that one. And that's the other thing too, I think, is that, and I was bad for this coming into the series as well, I think people need to stop saying the Oilers aren't good defensively, because no matter what their defense looks like on paper, the way that they're playing right now, I cannot, like, they are a defensive team. They do a good job of keeping the puck out of their net. They held the Golden Knights off the score sheet with Stuart Skinner in goal for 127 minutes, the final 127 minutes of that series. And in particular, I feel like John Klingberg's playing great. Like, he kind of came out of nowhere in that series. And the other one as well in these playoffs that surprised me from the Oilers is Evander Kane. I felt that going into the playoffs with how much time he'd had off, like, I thought maybe he could be a little effective as like in the physicality aspect, which he has been, but he's also been providing scoring, and that was not something I was expecting out of Kane heading into the playoffs. But regardless, the Oilers win Game 5. Kasperi Kapanen with the series clinching goal. Former Leaf. Your reaction is the same one that I
That's
had.
new. This happens every time a former Leaf is in the playoffs on a different team. They become the greatest player you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah. So Oilers end up winning the series. 4-1 is the final series score. The Oilers obviously going into the next round. It's tough to say, like, especially, I think people always say after each round who the favorite is. Like, it's going to probably looking like they're going to play Dallas, but who knows in that series if Winnipeg comes back now after that game yesterday. Like, the Western Conference Finals, I think, going to be a war no matter who the Oilers are playing. It's going to be a tremendous series. And Edmonton's a great team. I think they're a complete team. No matter what their team looks like on paper, they're getting scoring. They're getting good defense. And they've been getting good goaltending from Pickard. And now Skinner, those last 2 games of the series, gave him good goaltending as well. So I do like the Oilers going into the next round. As for the Golden Knights, heading into this offseason, I don't know if there's necessarily a clear direction for them heading into the offseason. I would say it would be to add more scoring, because you're not going to win a series being shut out by Skinner for the last 127 minutes of play. But Truman, what are your thoughts on that series?
So I guess I'll end it off I'll start off where you kind of ended off. So although he didn't have a great year, I think the effects of like Jonathan Marchessault not being there in the playoffs, scoring wise, really showed, because he's been obviously a great playoff performer throughout the years, and he knows how to score. And I think we saw that a bit. I agree. Vegas just has to add some depth on the scoring half. Otherwise, like Mark Stone was never 100%, and that's going to hurt your team because he's a force offensively. Like, not having that guy at his best is unfortunate. Other than that, I mean, Aiden Hill, I thought, was terrible in this series.
I'm not going to say anything bad about Hill. He's a good dude, so.
Fair enough. From a pure hockey perspective, I thought he really struggled. He was not the Aiden Hill that we've seen in the past within big moments or within playoff series. So I was disappointed with him, but I think he can find that again. And as for Edmonton, I've talked about this all year with them. Like, I think they're overrated still? Yes. But I do think their offense is considerably better this year than last year. I think their depth is better. I think they play team defense way better. Like, some people might be like, oh, the acquisitions aren't as like large. But Arvidsson hasn't like been this offensive juggernaut that you would maybe expect at times. But I've liked how he played. You know, I like his speed, and I like Paul Colson's two-way game, although he's not going to knock your socks off. I think Connor Brown's had a better year. And as you said, with Evander Kane, what's making him so special right now is, like, Evander Kane's a bit of when he plays hockey, he plays a little idiotic. And I actually thought in this Vegas series, he focused more on hockey than antics, and it served him very well. And I think if we see that Evander Kane, like, that is a depth piece that every team would like to have. A physical guy who can control himself, can provide output offensively, and is built for a playoff style game. I completely agree with you, what you said about Evander Kane. And I think he's just got to, keep things together. So we'll see if he's able to do that.
We will indeed. As for the other Western Conference series, the Winnipeg Jets, as I said, they avoided elimination yesterday with a 4-0 shutout of Dallas. Their second 4-0 win against the Stars in this series. But the unfortunate part for the Jets, they lost 3 other games that series, so they're down 3-2 heading into Game 6. Hellebuck's been better in this series. But I don't know about how you feel, Truman. I think there's still another year for him to give.
I think so too. I do think the problem for Hellebuck is not even in this series with Hellebuck. I don't know if there's a hot take, because McDavid's obviously still left in the playoffs. I don't know if there's anybody who's played as good in the playoffs this year as Jake Ottinger. I don't know who I would rather have on my team right now than him.
Freddie Anderson.
maybe Freddie Anderson. Yeah. But the zone, even last night that Jake Ottinger is in, my goodness. Like, if the Oilers run into this Jake Ottinger, I think they stand no chance. I don't think any team stands a chance. And that's the tough part for Hellebuck is, like, he's not playing well already, and he's going to get compared to the goalie across from him. And the goalie across from him right now is playing better than any goalie in the sport. So it's going to be tricky for him to, stand out ahead of Ottinger. But I do think there's that other gear, as you said, that he still can elevate to.
And as for the Stars, the Finnish Mafia has been on fire in this series for Dallas. Their 5 Finnish players, Heiskanen, Hintz, Rantanen, Granlund, and Lindell is the other one. Granlund had the hat trick in Game 4. Rantanen's been the best player in these playoffs so far. Leads the playoffs with 19 points. But, man, he's been on fire. And it's been since, I want to say it was Game 4 or 5 of that Colorado series where he finally started to look like the Rantanen of old. Like, if you think back to a year ago, Truman, you and I think, had this discussion where we both thought Mikko Rantanen was a future Hall of Famer. Like, forget about just being a superstar. We thought he was an all-time player in the NHL. And then all of a sudden, he goes to Carolina, has a rough stint there, gets traded to Dallas, and he's all right. Like, he's playing solid, but it's not the guy that they paid for at the deadline. And then it was the first 4 games of that Colorado series where he was kind of ineffective. Those last 3 games, and now in this Jets series, he's looking like the Mikko Rantanen of old. And he's having an all-time run with the Dallas Stars. I think at the end of it all, if Dallas does go on to win the Cup, I think you can consider Mikko Rantanen as the greatest trade deadline acquisition maybe ever.
Yeah, it's certainly up there. And as you said, like, I don't know if we had this direct conversation, but there were conversations in general of being like, is Mikko Rantanen even a top 15 player? Yeah. And now that is, like, not even a question. Like, the dude's a top 10 player. I would have argued to the grave that Braden Point was better at points in this season. Like, just as an overall player, who would I rather have? I legitimately cannot make that case anymore with what Rantanen is doing as the number 1 on this Dallas team. What he's doing is so special. And if he can keep this going against the Oilers and Ottinger can keep his thing up, I mean, they're so dangerous. They're going to need him to play at that level and match one of Draisaitl or McDavid in the next series, because the only way to contain those two is to outmatch them on your end offensively. You can't do anything about stopping them defensively. So, big series coming up for him if they advance. And, he's a Hall of Famer for sure now, I think.
I'm going to say as well, the Rantanen acquisition has allowed, and I guess his play in these playoffs has allowed Jason Robertson to take extra time to find his footing since coming back from injury. Robertson hasn't been the elite Robertson that we've seen in the past either to start off these playoffs. He was injured in the first round and now playing against the Jets, but he hasn't looked like the Robertson that we're used to. I think Rantanen's play and the other play of the Finnish Mafia has allowed Robertson to get back up to speed.
Yeah, and it's taken pressure off him. I think that's the biggest part, is there was always so much pressure on Robertson to be that superstar come crunch time, and he's just not. Like, he's a really good player, but he just is not that. And I think people have started to accept that within his game at kind of what he is. Like, he's a really good 1B, or he's a really good 2A type of player, within your superstar rankings on a team. And so, I think it's great for him. And I think once he won't be at full health the rest of the playoffs, but once he gets to a place where he can feel like himself, I think he's going to be really dangerous without that extra pressure, on his mind.
Now, for the Eastern Conference, we'll talk about the Leafs last. We'll end it off.
Sure, we'll go. Okay, let's talk about the boring series. My goodness, this one's a snoozer. Oh, my.
I agree with you, but, I mean, if you're Carolina, I guess you got to keep playing like that because it's working for them. They've won the last 2 series in 5 games each. The Devils series didn't surprise me that went 5. I thought this was a shoo-in to go 7 against Washington. But they beat the Caps in 5 games. as Truman said, I thought it was boring as well. I had that written down. But I think the thing with Carolina is they take shots from everywhere on the ice. Like they take low danger shots, they take medium danger, they take high danger shots. They shoot everything on the ice, and they are going to live and die by that style of play. You've seen it yesterday where ultimately it's the way that they win the game against the Capitals is Svechnikov's shot from the corner that most teams aren't taking and most players aren't taking, but Svechnikov takes it, ends up going past Logan Thompson. It's the series winner with a minute and a half left in the third period. So that's kind of like Carolina's going to live and die by that style of play.
For sure. Yeah, no shot is a bad shot. And I mean, yeah, as you said, it's very live and die. Like whether you run into a hot goalie or you're just not hitting the net, like that can come back to bite you. But when it's working, why not stick with it? I mean, yeah, they're and the pressure that it puts on another team when you're just flying and ripping it at their goalie defensively, like that's also another thing. And yeah, can they reach a Stanley Cup by doing it? I don't know. Like regardless of whoever you get, Toronto or Florida, likely Florida, it's gonna be a tall task. But yeah, I do think that, I mean, they've been a good team for years, and maybe they figure out one of these times and get there.
Yeah. The one critique of the Carolina Hurricanes, I mentioned all the shots they take, is their finishing ability. Like they aren't a high scoring team. We know that's if they end up dying by this style of play, we know what the discussion is going to be again. We've had it how many years now where they need a top player that can finish off those plays for you. But so far, so good for the Hurricanes. Freddie Anderson, best. I said it earlier. I think he's been the best goalie. You said Ottinger, but it's really a coin flip between those two guys. No denying that Anderson's had a great playoffs for the Hurricanes. 937 so far in these playoffs for Carolina. Very good numbers there. For Washington, on the flip side of this series, I do consider this season overall a win for the Caps. I get that you ultimately, at the end of the day, you finish first and you lose to the team that finished second in the Metropolitan Division. But if you think of where we were at the start of the season and the discussions we were having about the Capitals, I know you were high on them, but I don't think you had them first in the Metro. I had them as the number one wildcard team, which was higher than a lot of people had the Capitals at the start of the year, especially after they kind of retooled last offseason, made some moves to acquire some players. They brought in Jacob Chikrin, Logan Thompson. Both of those moves ended up being big successes. Pierre-Luc Dubois as well was overall pretty good player for them this past season. Then they get breakout years out of guys like Alexei Protas, Connor McMichael, Dylan Strome takes another step. So I like the Capitals going forward. It is going to be interesting to see where the Capitals go once Ovechkin is at the end of his career and he decides to retire. But it does look like at least he's going to be back for next season at the very least. So I think the Capitals are going to be a contender once again next year, and they're going to be looking to build off of this pretty successful season.
I 100% agree. I was higher than most, I think, on the Capitals. I did not expect any of this season. The Connor McMichael breakout is not talked about enough. That guy proved why he was a first round pick this year. He was really good. I think he's one of the more underrated players in all of hockey just because he's surrounded by so many great players on that team. I think the Pierre-Luc Dubois move, as I said from the start, I really like that move for them. And they allowed him to just be Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's not going to, as he overpaid a bit for sure, but he's a really serviceable player. And they put him in a position to play his style and not play what his money says he should be. And I think he was really good for that this year. And the Capitals team, I think the rallying cry for them was the OV goal record.
Yeah.
And once that ran out, I do think there was a bit of a spark that was lost, which I mean, I can't blame any of them. That would probably happen if I were a player on a team chasing something like that. So I think they ran out a bit of gas towards the end. And when you're playing a game against a team like Carolina, when they're on. And unfortunately for the Caps, they were really on against them.
They certainly were. We'll move on to the other series in the East. The Maple Leafs on the verge of elimination, down 3-2 against the Florida Panthers. I'll give my thoughts first here. So the Leafs go up 2-0 against Florida, and this is the uncharted territory for this team. It was actually uncharted territory when they went up 2-0 against the Senators. They had never had a 2-0 series lead, this group for the Maple Leafs, this core of the team. But they now get their second one of the playoffs against the Panthers. And I was surprised by that start of the series. Like I thought it was two good teams going at it, but I thought that the Panthers are just better kind of at the end of the day. But the Leafs start out the series hot. They're up 2-0. I don't think things could be going well. Things could have gone better. Stolars could still be in net, but I'm sure we'll get to that. As for Game 3, felt it was obviously the turning point of the series when Marchand scores that OT winner, and then Game 4 was where it started to go downhill for the Maple Leafs. Like I still thought after Game 3, and yes, it is Marchand who's haunted you for years that scores that winner, but I still felt like the Leafs were in a good spot, and they're in a good. But Game 4, that's the part where it really goes downhill. Lose 2-0. And then Game 5 was the rough one where things snowballed. And if the Leafs do not win this series, I think Game 5 is going to go down as one of the defining moments of this core for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was a 6-1 loss where I felt that the star players of the Leafs didn't show up. And I will say, though, the series isn't over yet. We've got Game 6 happening. Hopefully, it's 0-0 right now, so still within your reach. I will say, though, too, is that I think if you're the Leafs core players, you have to look at this as a huge opportunity going into Game 6. Because I think that you look at it as if you can tie this series, and if you come back to win this series, and if you go on to win the Stanley Cup from that, or if you go on to win the series, you've got a lot of momentum going into the next round. And if you win this Stanley Cup, you're going to be forever labeled as a hero in Toronto. Like, there will be no more talk of can they or can't they do it. Like, if you win the Stanley Cup, I talk about with my team, Vegas there. Wrong thumb there. Like, they win the Cup, and I don't care what they ever do again. I feel like with the Leafs, if they win the Cup, like, Toronto won't ever care. They won't care if they fall to last place the following season. So I feel like they should look at this as an opportunity. But Truman, I'm sure you have your own thoughts on the series. You're more of the Leafs expert here. Was there anything that I said that was wrong?
No, not at all. I wasn't sure what you were going to say, what route you were going to take, but I think you're incredibly accurate with your depiction of everything. The only thing I would say that I would feel different, honestly, Clayton, I think if they make the Stanley Cup final, like, obviously you want them to win, but you get down to the final two. That's something the Leafs haven't done in, anybody's lifetime, because everybody who probably saw their last cup is not here anymore. But that would change the whole narrative. And the way that I see these next two games, as Matthew Knies is injured, classic big time Leaf getting injured in the playoffs. What's new? What I see is if they're able to come back even for these next two, it saves Mitch Marner's career as a Leaf. I know the reports or whatever are out there, but if the Leafs are actually serious about not re-signing this guy or moving another way, if it's Marner, and he decides to, then it's Marner, and that's whatever. But if the Leafs are seriously thinking about not pursuing a guy who put up 100 points this year, I think you're absolutely out of your mind.
Yeah.
So I hope that's more media, but I do feel like if they get through this one, Marner's safe as a Leaf, I'm sure he'll probably then want to come back even more, because you get a series away from the Stanley Cup, and things are obviously different than they were before, and it was the first year under a new head coach. You feel pretty optimistic heading forward. So I in the first 3 games of the series, I thought the Leafs were the better team. I even thought in Game 3 they outplayed them. Game 4 was just the most blah game ever. And the Leafs were just not good. They just were not. They weren't energized. They weren't motivated. They just were kind of going through the motions. And then last game is the worst playoff game I have ever seen them play.
Yeah.
Embarrassing is one way to say it. There was not a single player in the Leafs lineup who was good in that game. You can't make the case for anybody.
Yeah.
Not one person. And that includes Chris Tanev, who I would say was considered okay in this game, but he's been arguably the best Leaf consistency-wise throughout this entire playoffs, and he's been a blessing. But for the Leafs, it's adapt or die at this point. Either you're going to overcome the Stanley Cup champions and find a way to do something that they don't do a lot, but have happened to them a lot, and that is come back from the jaws of defeat. I've really liked their start in this game today. Actually, they've had lots of chances. Sergei Bobrovsky.
I have the TV in front of me, but I haven't been paying as much attention. So
Sergei Bobrovsky, not talked about enough. He's having a heck of a back half of this series. He is at the start of the series. I'm like, this is a different Bobrovsky from the last time we played them in the playoffs. He's human, but
he looked tired. I thought he was tired. He looked tired at the start of the series, is what I thought. Two deep playoff runs in a row. Eventually, it's going to happen. I thought that was he was getting tired. But as you said, Truman, these last 3 games, he's been fantastic. And
that's what the best do. They find another gear. Obviously, he's a future Hall of Famer. He's got 2 Vezinas and a Stanley Cup. But the way I've watched him last couple, I'm like, this is the Bobrovsky throughout the entire series that we saw the last time the Leafs played Florida in the second round. Do I think there's no chance for the Leafs? If you want me talking from a realistic hockey perspective, I think there actually isn't that bad of a chance. On paper, they're a really good team. And Joseph Woll had a really bad game. I always like Joseph Woll, a lot. Probably too much for how he is as a goalie. If they had Stolarz, I'd probably feel even more comfortable. But yeah, I do think Joseph Woll can steal you a couple games in the playoffs and step up to the task. They showed his numbers. He's got a 950 in games where the Leafs could be eliminated. And I think he's played in 5 of them. So that's really solid numbers. Which also shows the Leafs goalie injuries in the playoffs. The fact that Joseph Woll has played 5 of those games. But I do think there's a shot. And I don't know who leads the charge. I think Matthews is really, really, this is not an excuse. He's been terrible.
I think
my favorite player has been terrible.
I think you need those 4 core guys to lead the way at the end of the day, because at the end of it, they are, and I know Berube's been a bit annoyed by people mentioning the core 4 this playoff run. I don't know if you've seen. He's been pretty annoyed by people mentioning them. But the reason why people do mention them is because they've been the constant in all this. It's not been Chris Tanev. It's not been Anthony Stolarz. It's been those 4 guys that have been part of this team, which has had the same story year in and year out for the last number of years. And I do agree with you. Even if they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals, say to Carolina, I think there's going to be more leeway for those core guys for the Leafs going into next season. Whereas if they lose this series, I get that they win the round against the Senators, but then people, whether you agree with it or not, people are going to make the argument that you didn't beat a good team in these playoffs.
No,
you didn't, right? People are going to say that.
For sure. It's the Leafs in the playoffs. It's a tough spot. And I think about it like this. And this is purely from an on paper, looking at hockey players' perspective. If the Leafs just let go of Mitch Marner, or they trade one, I'm just going to refer to the 3 for now, because Tavares, he's looked old in this series, and we know he's going to probably have less money on his contract next year, and it'll be, maybe a 3rd-line center for the rest of his career that's really solid. But for Nylander, Matthews, and Marner, if you were serious about getting rid of one of those guys, what is the better alternative? Playoff success aside, they have not done well in the playoffs, but who are you going to get that is better than those guys? Nobody. You could get 2 guys and they couldn't be on the equivalent to those 3. You just can't. And so that's
there isn't an immediate answer. I don't think there's any big name free agents that would be able to replace those guys right now.
For sure. And anybody saying oh, Sam Bennett, he's a gritty defensive playoff winner. Okay, I get it. What has the Leafs' problem been in the playoffs? Scoring. Sam Bennett is not going to up your scoring a whole bunch compared to Mitch Marner, despite him not scoring in the playoffs. They're probably going to score at the same rate. But to get into that playoff spot, who would you rather have, Mitch Marner or Sam Bennett in the regular season? Mitch Marner. Like, if the Leafs let one of those three go, this is maybe a crazy take, and maybe I'm freaking out a bit. I think there's a serious chance that the Leafs, they could slip out of the playoffs. With some of the young teams rising, if they let one of those three go, and it's just the big two now, like Florida is going to be Florida. Tampa is going to have more big dogs than the Leafs if they let one of those guys go. The Habs are a riser. We saw what the Sens did this year. They're a riser and could have more big dogs, so to say, than the Leafs. Like, you start slipping a little bit, and you get into this mediocrity level. So, yeah, like, I get it. The playoff narratives, all that, and I understand that as a fan, and I'm frustrated, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's all about making your team better.
But
the Leafs can't do that if they lose one of those three. They just
I'm going to throw out this scenario at you, and I do think that you could have a point. Like, they could slip out if you lose one of those top guys with all the teams that are on the rise in the Atlantic Division. Do you maybe take a step back to take two steps forward, where you take out, say, whether it's probably Marner's the one that goes. It's okay. The Mitch Marner fan club is still rooting on our guy. We're still solidly behind him. We think he's gonna score the winning goal in this game. But so you take out a Marner, probably is who goes. I don't think they trade Matthews. I've seen people throw out the possibility. I think you're gonna regret that one. And I don't think you trade Nylander, because he's been the guy that has been the one that's risen in the playoffs consistently. So if you take out Marner and you do bring in Sam Bennett, do you bring in, like, is it maybe a case where you need to take out a top guy to bring in a couple more lesser pieces, where overall it makes the overall team stronger, but you don't have that top guy? Do you get what I'm getting at here?
I understand what you're saying. What scares me, because I can't stop thinking about this trade that happened, because it's defined a lot of hockey things for me, and it's probably changed my opinion a bit too. And maybe it's just kind of one of those one-hit wonder things. But the Matthew Tkachuk trade for Huberdeau and Weegar,
yeah,
and we've seen how that has worked out. Matthew Tkachuk has gone on to be a superstar in Florida and win a Stanley Cup with them. And even in the year when they lost the Stanley Cup to Vegas, he was their maybe outside of Bobrovsky, was their best player, and playing like viciously hurt through both playoff runs. Yeah. And so I look at that and I say, okay, the Leafs get a forward and a defenseman, or whether they sign it or trade when Marner so leaves. And I look at them and I go, like, they're just going to end up.
You can't get regression out of one of those pieces or it looks bad.
Yeah.
Like you look at that Tkachuk trade, they got regression out of Huberdeau, so it looks bad. If you get Huberdeau at what he was with Florida and Mackenzie Weegar, you win that trade, but you get a regressed Huberdeau. If Sam Bennett regresses with the Leafs, it looks dumb.
Exactly. And you know what you have with Marner, because he is 90 to 100 points every single year. And okay, yeah, the playoffs have not been good. Funny enough, he's still over a point a game this year, which is not talked about enough. But I get the last games have been really bad. But you know what you have with him. And we saw it with Colorado this year. They get rid of Rantanen to bring in Martin Necas, have that cap flexibility going forward, and put themselves in a better spot. And they lose in the first round of Dallas, who picks up the big superstar. We watched that happen. We see, and I know Tampa didn't do well in the playoffs this year, or Carolina, they didn't do in the playoffs when he had him as well. The Jake Gensel trade to Carolina. Who benefited from that the most? Well, none of those guys are with Pittsburgh anymore. And Jake Gensel was really solid in the playoffs for Carolina. And I get he moves on to Tampa now, but he was really, really good. Anytime those trades happen, like, very rarely does the team that gets like the lesser player actually outdo the team that gets the superstar. And that's why it gets me frustrated when I think about, Marner not being on the Leafs because of the results. which, I mean, hockey's obviously a results-driven industry, and it's a what have you done for me lately industry. And Marner has not done a lot as of late. And so that puts the Leafs in jeopardy, I think, long-term it does. Yeah. I saw a stat. I'll say this, and then I'll let you chime in here, Clayton, because I know I'm kind of ranting. Saw a stat today. Alexander Ovechkin has only surpassed the second round once in 20 years. Once. In that 1 year, he won a Stanley Cup. But nobody's ever going to talk about the 20 years ever again because he's got that one cup.
But I will say they did talk about it before the cup. Like, they talked about it a ton. And I think that's where it comes in, where you say, if the Leafs do get over that hump, like, all that talk goes away. We'll be looking at the Leafs the same way, where their legacy will be these fantastic players, and we'll be like, hey, remember when people thought they weren't good? And we'll be laughing about it. Like, that's what happens if you do get past this round.
Exactly. And right now, obviously, the Leafs are in this core, at 50% of the Ovechkin timeline that they talked about. But also they have to do it. They just have to straight up do it to dispel those narratives. But what I'm kind of trying to say by this is, the Caps held it together for that long, and it took that long to get a cup. I don't know how many. It must have taken 14 or 15 years then. Maybe my math's wrong.
Ovechkin was drafted in 2004, so they went in 2018. So it's 14 years after Ovechkin's drafted, but he didn't play the first 2 years after he was drafted because of the lockout. Or he didn't play lockout year. The next year he plays.
So 13? Is it 13 years?
Would be 13 seasons, yeah.
Took 13 seasons for Ovechkin to win a cup. And Backstrom and that group or whatever. And they never got rid of one of those big dogs. I know they got rid of Alexander Semin, but he was he wasn't Mitch Marner. That's for darn sure. So it's a tough spot. The Leafs are just in this terrible purgatory. And I wish that as a little kid, I did not become a fan of them because I hate trying to figure them out. And I hate watching the Oilers and seeing Connor Brown, Zach Hyman, every former Leaf you can imagine, just having playoff success.
Yeah.
On a team that is, I know they have Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, but the Leafs have 4 versus 2. I'm not saying they're not better than those two, but they have big dogs with role players, and the Oilers find success with that, and the Leafs don't. I don't get it. But.
That's a fair point. You made some great points there, but
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. We'll move on to some more news in the NHL.
We should.
Just kind of wrap up here, I guess, with some news. I just put the point down here. Team Canada's World Championship team is stacked. They should win that tournament. I don't think any team comes close to that.
I agree. And I think Macklin Celebrini is going to tear the top off of the NHL next year because he's had an experience to play with Crosby and McKinnon. The amount that kid is going to soak up and learn from one little tournament. And when they find success in the tournament, because they're going to play great, he is going to find out how to play in a hostile environment. I think Bedard's missing out. Bedard, if he was there, I think he would have been able to experience some things. I think Celebrini, what he's going to take from this is huge. He could be really good next year, really, really good.
I think the Sharks are building something special there for sure.
Agreed.
Rick Tocchet hired by the Philadelphia Flyers this past week. Do I think Rick Tocchet's a good coach? Yep, I do. He had a good year in Vancouver a couple of years ago. Here's why I don't like this hire. I brought it up on last week's show, and we didn't get your opinion on this, but I'm interested to see what your opinion is on this subject. I'm not a fan of players that were legends with teams going back to be the coach there. Now, a counterpoint to what I was arguing here was Terrell said that then there are people that say, well, he's only hired because he's Rick Tocchet, kind of like Jeff Saturday. He's only hired because he's Jeff Saturday, by the Colts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here's what I make the argument here for is I don't like it when former players are hired by the team that they were a legend with. And I think you see it right now with the Detroit Red Wings, where Steve Yzerman, I don't think, has done a great job as the Red Wings GM. I don't think they're building anything special, but it feels like Red Wings fans are a little less willing to criticize Yzerman due to the fact that he was a legend with the team. And I know that it can work out. It worked out with Joe Sakic in Colorado. It's worked out with Rod Brindamore in Carolina. But, and I mean, for Philly, I think they've got too many here. Like, you've got Daniel Briere as well as the GM. Like, I feel I don't like it because I made the point on last week's show. I don't want to see Jack Eichel as the head coach of the Golden Knights, because if he is, then people will say, well, how can you say Eichel doesn't know what he's doing when he won the Stanley Cup in 2023? Is the argument you will get back. And I don't like when former players go back to a team that they were a legend with, because it feels like people are a little less willing to criticize them.
For sure. No, that's a real thing. I think in terms of hiring the best available person for the job, the Flyers hit it on the head. I think Tocchet's a fantastic coach. And obviously he wanted to leave Vancouver and he's got a good place now, but I do agree. I think this one was kind of bound to happen, but like at the same time,
I think there's more egregious examples than Tocchet. Like, I don't think Tocchet's all that egregious. I think it could work out. And like you said, he's probably the best option available.
Yeah, well, like Sacco with the Bruins, like the fact that they fired Jim Montgomery and then he went on to take St. Louis to the playoffs, and then they hired Gio Sacco, and Bruins fans, like, they didn't even blame him. It was kind of just straight to, oh no, like our team was supposed to be bad. No, you were actually in the running until he became head coach, and then everything fizzled out. And I don't hear enough blame going his way. Although I don't think he's going to be the head coach next year, so maybe the blame was felt enough. But yeah, guess we'll see.
The last one here, Ken Holland hired as the GM of the LA Kings. You're laughing. I'm laughing too.
Did you leave that one for last? You know how I feel about Ken Holland.
I didn't purposely leave it for last, like to make it as a joke, but like, it was more so just how I seen the news. But yeah, Ken Holland hired as the new GM of the Kings. I'm not a fan of that move for the Kings. I didn't think his tenure in Edmonton was great. Yes, they make the final, but I thought he could have done more with what he was given going into Edmonton. He also didn't draft well at all with the Edmonton Oilers.
No, I've expressed many times how I feel about Ken Holland. I feel like he's stuck in the past. And I mean, so even the signings like the Duncan Keith signing and like things like that, I'm just going like, what is he doing? Like there's no, or that was a Duncan Keith trade. Like I was just like there's no reason for any of that. Like, who do you think that you're acquiring here? So and with the Red Wings, they hit on some late round picks, but those guys were unheard of. Like if they were so good, they would have been drafted in the first round. Nobody was going out there and being like, Henrik Zetterberg, he's the future, so we're going to let him slip to the 6th round. They weren't jumping up for joy when they drafted Henrik Zetterberg. They drafted a guy that they were like, oh, he might come and play for us. And so I think that's where Holland's legacy kind of lies, is like he hit on some late round draft picks that were magic beans in many ways, and it has carried him to this point. And I think for LA,
I think Holland deserves a lot of the blame for the fall of the Red Wings.
Yeah, no, 100%.
He made moves for guys like Kyle Quincy to try and keep the run going, and it did not work out.
No, they crashed and burned, and was without Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, very well could have been the fall of the Oilers too. Yeah. I mean, not just with how he drafted, but the guys that he acquired and their level that they were at when he acquired them. Like the Duncan Keith one just comes to mind way too often. Like the Jack Campbell signing, I was like right off the bat, I was like, even as a Leafs fan, like, what is that? The Hyman one, I was like, I had watched enough Hyman where I was like, that's a pretty darn good move. Now, I thought it wouldn't age as well. It obviously has, but yeah, some questionable moves. And I worry for the Kings, who are already an older team, that they're only going to get even older than that with Holland at the helm. So we'll see what happens. But
see what happens indeed. That does it for today's Armchair Athletes. Thanks to Truman for joining the show today. We appreciate it, Truman. And hopefully we'll be back next week with another episode of the Armchair Athletes.